Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Sagittarius and your moon in Cancer. I had this request today, and not too long after that, I had somebody request the opposite version with the sun in Cancer and the moon in Sagittarius. So I said, I'm going to do both of these on the same day. But this is an example of how we have to separate out the sun from the moon, because if everything is the same, then I would be doing two identical videos, and I'm not going to be doing that. There are going to be differences. What we look at first is we say, what does the sun in Sagittarius represent? And and then we break it down even further. What does the sun represent? Our aspirations, our aspirational self, our ambitions. I don't like the word ambitions. I prefer aspirations, because ambition has gotten this, maybe it's a bad rap, but it seems like somebody who is in their ego, in their toxic ego, and all they're doing is trying to, get ahead by any means necessary. And so when we aspire to do something, to me, it's more open-ended. We have certain hopes and wishes, and we're open to anything else that comes up, and maybe we'll go in a different direction if something takes us there. So that's how I differentiate those two words. But in any case, it is directed towards the outside world, whereas the moon is the emotional nature, and it's personal to us. The sun is masculine, so it is shared with the world in a very yang, the masculine kind of way, externalized energy. So, and this is when you're shining your light, when you're sharing your gifts. This, to me, is the heart of what the sun is all about. So in Sagittarius, it's the person who is the visionary, the seer, or the prophet. I mean, those are kind of grandiose terms. I'm a sun in Sagittarius, and I don't consider myself like a prophet or anything like that, but I do consider myself like a philosopher. Maybe that's a better term, because Sagittarius rules the ninth house, and a big part of that is philosophy. Well, even somebody who's an atheist has a philosophy, right? The ninth house is the God house. So people who are Sagittarians, I would say by and large, tend to believe in God. But if they are atheists, they probably are devout atheists, and they have a whole intricate system of why they're an atheist and all that kind of stuff. And maybe they even have like an atheist group that they belong to, and things that they live by. Or even like what are they called? Unitarian Universalists. Some of them, they seem to be humanists, where, I think they're different depending on the denomination, the church itself, but some of them seem to be very humanistic, where they kind of elevate poets and artists and, the great thinkers of life, and celebrate that and find inspiration in that. But some of them might be more religious. I'm not sure. But anyway, there's always that seeking quality of Sag. It's funny. Not too long ago, I happened to play a song by The Who called "The Seeker." Came out in the early 70s, or maybe it was the late 60s. I don't know. And I just couldn't get enough of that song for probably a month. I just kept playing it because I love it. I might play it again tonight. And Roger Daltrey sings, "They call me a seeker till the day I die," and that lifelong search for meaning, for the truth. That is Sag. And then you have combined with that the moon in Cancer, which is very nurturing. The moon rules Cancer. So you would think that there might be some things in common with these two signs, because since Cancer's a water sign, it's going to be naturally intuitive. It's in the moon position. The moon is our intuition. So that enhances that as well. And you also have to look at what house it's in. Maybe it's in one of the water houses, the 4th, 8th, or 12th houses, and then it would really boost that. But in any case, yeah, I can find common ground, but it is considered in conjunction with Sag, meaning that it's 150 degrees apart, and it's like wearing a striped shirt with polka dot pants. It doesn't fit, and this is because of the elements involved are considered inharmonious, meaning that they clash. So water and fire, and they certainly clash. If you are a Sag and you know someone who's a Cancer, or to a lesser degree, some of the other water signs like Scorpio, Pisces, definitely, because that squares Sag. You may also find that sense of, I wouldn't call it irritation, although squares, like with Pisces, that creates irritation, but it's more like a feeling that you're constantly being misunderstood. So this is happening within yourself. By the way, talking about this happening with other people, it's because Sag sometimes comes across as insensitive to people that don't understand that energy, like the water signs, because they tend to approach things differently, and they're taking things personally because that's just an element of water to really personalize their life experiences. And so you have that built into yourself. Isn't that wonderful? But you have to look to see if there is an actual inconjunction there, because technically it won't be there unless the sun and moon are within 12 degrees of each other. 10 or 12 is probably the max. And that's a wide orb, definitely. But for our purposes here, we're just talking about that. However, you really don't need to make it an official inconjunction to feel that sense of confusion at times with your emotional nature as a Sagittarian. Sagittarians want freedom, first and foremost, but you may want children when you have the moon in Cancer. And so it can be like in a very difficult position that you find yourself in, because it could scare you, that commitment that it's going to take, that complete commitment, and how will you feel claustrophobic and things like that. What you can do if you are in that time of life where this is a concern of yours, you can check your inner planets. Like, for instance, for Sag, it's not uncommon for you to have inner planets in Scorpio. And if you do, or even in Capricorn, because these are both feminine signs, if you do, you may have an easier time making the decision to start a family, because you won't feel that same sense of what resistance. You'll feel more like it's the right thing to do, because those two signs are more traditional. If, on the other hand, you have the Aquarius energy happening, or even the Libra energy on the other side, you may really feel that strong sense of resistance. But that still wouldn't mean that you wouldn't do it, because the emotional tug is definitely going to be there. And if, that's a very important decision to make. So obviously it's something to take a lot of time and really explore it. But I just feel like that could be a biggie for any Sun Cancer individual. And this can be female and male. Even if a man isn't giving birth, he still has to be a part of that process. So That's one thing. But also just being just having like kind of that, being all in the feels, as the kids say, you know, that can be like, you can be kind of a moody person. And Sag is a big puppy dog. Sagittarians tend to be very optimistic, very cheerful in their day-to-day demeanor, but you might be a little bit moody. Just meaning that, doesn't mean that you're a Debbie Downer all the time. It just might mean that you wear your heart on your sleeve. So if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you don't hide it. You know, you kind of get, you know, you might get grumpy sometimes. You might be not always bright and shiny. Look to the rising sign, because that's how other people can perceive you. If you have water, if you have Pisces rising, this can really be a thing, you know? And it is something to kind of work on, because I kind of observe people who have this tendency. I'm not talking about this specific combination, but just in general, people who tend to be moody. And I think a lot of it is what they are buying into. It could be their thoughts. It could be their influences, because when you have a moon in a water sign, and also look to the house it's in, you have to be very careful about what kind of things that you consume. Even, maybe food, but also entertainment. Are you watching things that are very sad, or, very depressing, or very, the news? You might, Sages like to keep on top of things, but sometimes, you have to really honor your sensitivity, because you may underestimate it and you don't realize how much you are absorbing. Water is very retentive, and, it's, there was that, remember that book about the man who programmed the water and everything. So honor that part of yourself and be very diligent about that. And you might find that you don't have that kind of, I was going to say emotional instability, but I don't mean it in the way that we usually say it. I just mean the moon itself as an entity is considered very changeable. So wherever it is in your natal chart, you will see fluctuations in that area. So if somebody has, the moon in the fifth house, I have the moon in the fifth house, and they say a lot of love affairs. Well, that's not true for me, but it can be true in general for people. Or the moon in the sixth house, maybe a lot of employment. You tend to change jobs frequently. But the point is that you don't want to have that be a habit. Being flexible is great, and being able to feel, different feelings, that is wonderful. And we're human. Sometimes we aren't always on, and that's fine. It's just when it gets to the point where you feel like you can't, you have to like display it in a very overt way, that it can cause problems, because, it's like taking your personal life and bringing it into your public life. That's what I really meant. So the thing about this combination in terms of love is that you're very, Sag is not emotional the way water signs are, which is like taking things personally at a deep level. The fire signs are more passionate, so their emotions tend to get riled up when they hear a story on the news, or they, have this thing that really they feel very strongly about in their personal life. But it's not really necessarily about them as an individual, but just like some cause or something like that. And so, but it can still, Sages tend to be dramatic. All fire signs tend to kind of have that little flair when they talk, when they experience things. because they just are fired up. I don't know how else to put it. And so this combination can be very good for anything that involves trying to show feelings. So when you're in a relationship, you can be very emotive, and that can be very good because you might be romantic. You might be, with the moon in Cancer, you're sentimental, you're nurturing. Sag, for a female, Sag is a masculine, for everybody, Sag is a masculine sign, but for a female, some Sagittarian women may not like to do things that are considered domestic, but this can make you more that way. Like you might like to cook, whereas some other Sagittarian women might just be like, I don't even want to deal with it. And just being that kind of, as a parent, I think a lot of Sages, if you just isolated it with the sun sign, might give their children a lot of freedom, might not be so what we could call coddling their children. And like when a kid falls on the ground and some parents, are you okay, are you okay? I notice some parents just go, they just kind of like, they don't rush to do that. They just they might look, they're not like being negligent, but they don't want to feed into that. And yet you might be that kind of person who is very nurturing to the point of like being very overprotective of your child, because Cancer tends to be an overprotective energy. In the type of work that you do, this might favor anything in the healing arts, simply because, like I said earlier, since Sag is so interested in spiritual matters, when you combine the Cancerian energy, which is taking care of people, it can be a healer. I mean, I could easily see something like that. But definitely like a teacher, especially like an early childhood or a kindergarten, grade school teacher. That's something that I think a lot of Sages always wanted to be a teacher. I certainly did when I was young. And then I actually have a lot of educational coursework in that area, especially with early childhood and that kind of thing. But I don't have them. I don't have the moon in Cancer, but I think that Sages tend to gravitate towards teaching. And I mean, there's so many things. I mean, even a writer, when you have the moon in a water sign like Cancer, it can be very good. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you have really good memories. Like you can remember your past very well. Cancer is a sign of the past. So maybe even like at the college level, it could be any level, but history might be a big, like a strong interest of yours, and you might turn it into the subject that you teach. And genealogy, the studying of your family tree. But what I was talking about with writing is historical novels, or just using your very vivid memory to find like short stories. There's this great writer. I think her name is Louise Erdrich or something like that. You probably know who I'm talking about if you like to read. And she's like a contemporary writer, and I think she's a Cancer, and she writes a lot. I think she writes a lot about Native American. I think she's based out of Minnesota. I'm not sure, but I haven't. I think I read a short story of hers in one of my English courses at college when I went back to college, but I think she's a Cancer, and that kind of thing where you're writing about maybe experiences that you had. Of course, you fictionalize them. It's like autobiographical fiction. And, they're based on your memories. I don't know if she's doing that, but for some reason she popped into my mind because I think she's a Cancer. So yeah, things like that. And anyway, I think I'll leave it there. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.